Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jenny and this is the third and last part of the Olivia bag pattern. Now you are going to take your lining piece. On the top part of your lining, you are going to mark half an inch. So regarding the lining, I made a box corner lining for the video tutorial of this bag, but on the pattern I made a different type of lining because the box corner lining didn't work perfectly for me. So you can check the pattern instruction to see the other method I use in preparing my lining. So you are going to take each of your lining top and place it on this half-inch mark. Place it right on top. So now take this to the sewing machine and top stitch at this bottom part of the lining top. Now we are going to apply gum at the edge of the lining piece so that by the time we place it on the marked out parts, this marked out parts of the lining piece, it's not going to move out of place. So we're just going to apply our gum. For the top lining, do not interface, just fold the raw edges because by the time you interface it, it is going to be too thick when you are sewing. Okay. So we're going to allow this dry for about 5 to 10 minutes. So now I'm just going to place this on top of the line, this half-inch line we marked out. So just place it on top. So I'm just going to apply my machine oil. Using a brown color thread to match with my exterior fabric. So first we are going to sew our zipper overlay to our lining piece. So to do this, you are going to mark 2.5 inches from the top parts. 2.5 inches. So now when placing this, you have to make sure it's at the center or middle part of your lining. So to get the middle part, you're just going to fold your overlay, fold it into 2 equal halves. So I'm going to use my pen to mark right at the middle. Okay, so now for the lining, I'm going to fold into 2. Fold it into 2 equal halves. And just press down it. Press it down so this way you are going to get the middle parts of your lining. Okay, so now you can open this. I don't know if you can see the line. It's not that visible. So I'm just going to place this right on top. But before placing this, we're going to apply, you can use a double-sided tape for this. So I'm just going to apply my gum. Apply a tiny line of gum. Make sure it's not too much because we are going to sew, and when it's too much, your needle gets sticky and find it difficult to sew. So just going to apply. Okay, so now you can allow this to dry for some few minutes. right at the center. Okay. Okay. So now take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a box stitch at the edge all around the edge. We're sewing around the edge of the zipper overlay. So first I'm going to apply my machine oil. So I'm not going to back stitch since we're sewing a box stitch. I'm just going to gently sew round. Okay, so we're going to back stitch at this point where we started. So now we're going to cut open these parts for the zipper. You're going to cut out the lining from these parts. So I just cut a straight line at the middle. Then you can turn it the other way around and just trim. So I feel it's easier to trim this way, but just be careful not to cut on your zipper overlay. So now you can see it's all neat on the other side. So I'm going to keep this and sew our pocket lining next. So now this is my zipper and this is 9 inches long. So now you're going to take wrong surface of your lining piece or your pocket lining and place it on the right side of your zipper. So you're placing the wrong side, you place it on the right side of your zipper. You make sure both edges are aligned. So we're going to sew the edge, you're going to sew it together, after which you take the other piece of your lining, the wrong side, and you place it on the right side of the zipper. Make sure the edges are aligned. When you are sewing, you have to check to make sure the edges are aligned. So now you can see the edges are well aligned. So I'm just going to start sewing. So you back stitch. So now you are going to press down this seam allowance. You are going to lay it flat this way. I don't know if you can see. So you make sure it is laid down flat. Now we're going to top stitch on the lining piece. I'm going to back stitch right there. Lay it flat. So you make sure you are sewing very close. You are sewing close to the zipper itself. So you back stitch. So before sewing the pocket piece to the main lining, we're going to fix our zipper. So I'm just going to quickly do this. Just open your zipper a little bit, pass one edge inside your zipper pull, passing the other, and just hold both at the back. Okay, so we are going to apply a tiny line of gum close to the edge of the zipper. You apply it close to the lining itself so it doesn't show inside your zipper by the time you sew. So advise you use a tiny cutting board to do this, but I'm just going to use my brush. I'm just going to be very careful. So you can use your double-sided tape for this. I'm going to allow this dry for some minutes. I'll just lay this down and I'm going to place my zipper overlay. So I'm just going to arrange my zipper pull and place this right on top. So now you have to make sure the distance, your 1 inch distance, is equal on both sides. So just press this down. So now we're going to top stitch at this part of the zipper overlay to hold the zipper in place. So I'm just going to start from this point. Now remember, we're not back stitching since we're sewing the box stitch. And when sewing, make sure your pocket piece is laid down flat on both sides, so you don't sew the pocket piece together with your zipper overlay or with your zipper. So I'm just going to sew. Okay, now you have to be very careful with your zipper pull. You can move it, but so if you get to this point and your zipper pull is disturbing, you can just raise your machine force and pull it back. Then you continue sewing. So now I'm going to backstitch at this point where we started from. just going to cut. Okay, now you're just going to turn it over. Now I'm going to sew. Just pull this down. Okay, so now we're going to sew the zipper lining close. So when sewing, just move your main lining piece, move it back. Now I'm going to sew the side, and we're going to sew the bottom part of it. So we're sewing it this way. Don't bother about this excess. We're going to trim it off later on, and we're going to sew this other side of it. So you have to make sure you move your lining piece away when sewing, so you don't sew on top of your lining piece. So now I'm just going to pull my lining backward, align this, and I'm going to sew this. So you have to back stitch. Sorry. So now I feel I didn't back stitch properly at this point, so I'm just going to turn it over and I'm just going to back stitch. So you have to back stitch properly so that your zipper doesn't have an opening from the inside. Okay, cut that. So after sewing, we're just going to trim this off. I'm just going to trim this off as well. Just trim off any excess you have. Okay. So now you can see our zipper pocket is ready. So next we are going to prepare the slip pockets. On this longer side of the slip pocket, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch on both sides. So this time I'm going to be folding the edge. So now you can just place your double-sided tape on this marked out part, but I'm just going to apply my gum. So now I'm going to allow this dry for about 5 to 10 minutes. So now you're going to place the edge on this line you marked out. Just place it on top of the line. So you're going to fold into 2 equal halves. We're going to top stitch. We're going to top stitch at this upper part of the slip pocket just to hold it together. So we're just going to top stitch on it. So I'm just going to top stitch at this top part. So you can just back stitch. on our trim pockets or pocket trim, we are going to mark the midpoint. So we're going to mark the middle point of this. So now remember, this is the width of this is 1.5 inches. So half of 1.5 is 1/4 inch. So we're going to mark 1/4 inch on this. Now we're going to apply our gum. So you can use your double-sided tape. I'm just going to apply my gum. So just apply your gum. Now we're going to allow this dry for about 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to place it on this middle mark. Just eyeball, make sure it's on the mark. Now just fold this over. So now we're going to sew a box stitch. I'm going to sew all around the pocket trim. So you sew the side and you sew the top part and the bottom part of the pocket trim. So I'm just going to apply my machine oil. Just apply. Okay. I'm going to start sewing. Okay. So I'm not going to back stitch since we are sewing the box stitch all around. So I'm just going to sew before back stitching, sew all around and then back stitch later on. Okay, so now I'm going to back stitch at this point where we started from. So now I'm just going to trim off this excess. Okay, so now I'm going to place this on our lining, our bag lining. So we're going to mark 2.5 inches from the top. So okay, to place this, we're going to get the midpoint of our main lining. So first I'm just going to fold this into 2 equal halves. So now just press this. Just press it to get the midpoints. Okay, so now this is the midpoint. So now on your pockets, you are going to fold into 2 as well. So you can just press. So now you see the midpoint of it. Or when you fold into 2, you can use your pen to just mark at that midpoint. Okay, so now place it at the midpoint of your lining. Make sure both midpoints are together and make sure you're placing it on the 2 inch you marked out at the top. the 2-inch mark. So just place it this way. So now we are going to sew the side of the pocket, of the slip pocket, both sides and the bottom part. So we're not going to sew this top part of it because this is going to be the opening for our slip pocket. So now I'm just going to start sewing. So now both linings are ready. So next we're just going to place them right sides together. Place both right sides together. Okay. So we're going to sew each side. When you sew from the top, you're going to back stitch when you get to this down part of the side. You're not going to sew this cut out now. After sewing both sides, we're going to sew the bottom part of it. So we're sewing with 1/2 inch. So I'm going to mark my 1/2 inch from the top. Now, because we don't want our lining to be bulky on the inside, we're not sewing straight, so we're going to sew slants. So now I'm going to mark 1¼ inches from the bottom part, and then I'm going to connect both marks together. Okay, so I mark 1/2 inch from the top and 1¼ inch from the bottom. So when we're going to sew on this line. So you can see it's not a straight stitch. We're sewing from this part down here. Now on the bottom part, we're going to sew with just 1/2 inch. So you can just mark out your 1/2 inch. Now these other parts, we're going to repeat same thing we did on the first side. So you mark 1/2 inch, and on the bottom part you're going to mark 1¼ inches. So now I'm just going to join the marks, both marks together. Okay, so I'm just going to connect my 1/2 inch at the bottom part. Okay, so now I'm going to sew the side, both sides, and the bottom part. After sewing, I'm going to explain how I'm going to sew these cut out parts later. Okay, so just going to start from this point. So you back stitch. Please support and encourage me by subscribing to my YouTube channel, like and drop your comments on the comment section. So you can purchase the pattern, the Olivia Bag pattern, by clicking on the link in the description box, which will take you to our website. Now on the website, you're going to see other things like our ongoing online class and some other bag pattern. Now for the online class, we're teaching you how to make 12 different bag designs, footwear, and many other things. So check it out and make sure you purchase 1 or 2 things from our shop. Thank you. now before sewing this boxed corners close, we're just going to trim off this seam allowance. Now I'm going to sew these cuts out close. So you are going to make sure both this part where you join the bottom parts together matches with this part where you join the side together. You have to make sure the midpoints both matches. Okay, so I'm going to sew it this way. So now I've loosed these two parts of these two top lining from my main lining. So now I've cut out a 23 by 1.5 inch synthetic lining, a black synthetic lining. Remember, I earlier told you I've exhausted this particular brown leather, so I'm going to be using this black synthetic leather as my top lining. So now remember, we already marked out 1/2 inch at the top part of our lining, so I'm just going to place this place it on the mark. Just place it on the mark, and I'm going to sew it together. Remember, we already trimmed off a little bit the seam allowance from our main lining. By the time I finish sewing my top lining, it's going to remain a little bit excess, which I'm just going to trim off. So if you are making if you are making your lining for your bag and you plan on adding the top lining, if the bag you are making is a leather bag, you do not need to interface your top lining, so that by the time you are trying to top stitch around your bag, it doesn't become too thick for you to sew through. But if you are working with fabric, light fabric like your Ankara fabric, you have to interface you can interface it with interface as light as your Decover light. So now I'm just going to sew this. I'm going to place it on my 1/2 inch mark and sew. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and just sew the top lining to the main lining piece. Okay, so I'm just going to sew this. Make sure it's on the 1/2 inch. You can use your double-sided tape to just hold this down. So I'm just going to trim off this excess. I'm going to put this in and sew each side close. Make sure they are well aligned. The top lining is properly aligned. So now I'm just going to place this inside. So first I'm going to clip the middle part of it to the gusset, to the middle of the gusset panel. Okay, so now I'm going to top stitch round this. We're top stitching from the inside of the lining. We're not top stitching from the exterior part of the bag. We top stitch from the inside. So I'm going to start from the back part of the bag. So I'm just going to apply my matching oil. So I'm just going to raise this. Just push with a little force so your machine can pass. Just push. Okay, so here we're still going to push. Just apply a little bit of pressure or force so your machine foot can climb these parts. So you apply force. Machine oil. So now remember, this is the front part of your bag, so you have to be careful so your stitches come out neat. So now we're done with our So this is the finished Olivia bag. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more video tutorial. Also, don't forget to purchase the Olivia bag pattern at a 15% discount off. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like and comment. Thank you. Bye and happy new year in advance, everyone.